Elevated Grapes Podcast.
Elevated Grapes Podcast.
With your host, Sethi.
Your host, Sethi.
And Stylist Rashi Bindra.
It's time to get started.
Let's talk fashion, shall we?
Good partners about it. Helping you get your protein shake when you need it.
Yeah, and then I gave a hint for like Chinese food, and that hint was like totally ignored. That's what a good partner also does.
All right, guys, so welcome to Elevated Grapes. I am your host, Sethi.
And Stylist Rashi Bindra.
And we have a special guest with us today who may or may not be in the scene. She may pop in and out. Right now, she's staring at us from across the room. Usually where Nab sits, but he's not here with us today. Guy's like in LA or something. Like, you know, I don't really understand. And
Taking over the world.
Yeah, and if this special guest decides to jump up on that table right now, then what's going to happen is that she's going to knock over our actual camera that's recording us. Hey, I don't think you should be jumping all over the
okay,
the
can
table.
you just like call her here, maybe, and then she'll come because she like likes the both of us?
Well, how about we get to the topic at hand first, and we'll keep an eye on her because if she jumps... Hey, excuse me, young lady. Can you not jump on there, please? Thank you. So the special guest we're talking about is my cat, Billy. She is in the room with us.
She's adorable.
She may jump into the middle of the scene. She may not. Right now, she's staring at the camera because she likes to play. She likes us to play cat videos generally, and so when she sees a phone that's active, she wants her cat videos on. And right now, all she sees is our faces on that camera.
I think you should put the cat video like on the side here, and then she can just like be with us and be part of the podcast.
Well, it's just also that requires me to work an iPad, which I don't know how to do.
Okay, once you log in, you just go on YouTube and you put a cat video.
Yeah, but we'll do that afterwards because right now we're in the middle of an actual show, and if we decide to change that, taking care of a cat, may not bode well for the listeners who are trying to focus on a topic that we haven't even mentioned yet. And you know what the interesting thing about today is that we were discussing before we had everything set up, which we did have some technical issues, which does happen in these scenarios.
It does.
One of the mics wasn't working, so if we had an actual guest on a mic today, that would have been a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, but I mean, like, knowing how you and I have been able to overcome all these challenges these past few months, I'm pretty sure we would have figured something out.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been a bit more conventional. I probably would have had to use the lapels on something, and it's just not the best sound quality, so I was trying to stay away from that.
This is our journey.
So we were getting ready for the podcast, and we were thinking about, well, what do we, sort of talk about? We're thinking about, maybe getting into sort of the transition of men's shoes from fall to winter and showcasing some of that because we had a bunch of shoes that we could have used. And then we were talking about how we had such an amazing conversation with our friends from City Moguls and how it sparked just almost triggered even something internally for both of us because there's so many relatable topics in that conversation that hit sort of deep just in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, that conversation went very, very personal without us even like realizing it.
Yeah, which was nice. I mean, and that's, I think, one of the reasons that you and I got into this whole idea is because we get to have conversations with folks, and you really don't know where it's going to go, what direction it's going to take, and what's going to come up in conversation. And sometimes it does get very personal because, especially when you're speaking with people that you're comfortable with or have a relationship outside of, doing a show, sometimes you're having a conversation, it takes a direction that it would regularly take when you're just talking without mics and cameras in your face, right?
Yep.
And I think that's kind of what happened there. So there's a couple of topics I think that, we were chatting about that felt really hit home and really, something that we could take a deeper dive on and just kind of explore those specific topics. So I think that would probably be a good place for us to start.
Yeah, let's just jump right into it.
Jump right in.
So
the topic was fashion. Fashion because it's the world we're in, but sort of event planning. We're doing different types of tasks and managing different types of tasks, and the stress and anxiety that comes with it, and sort of the impact that has on your life outside of those events and situations, and the impact that has both on the event and the situations too.
Right.
I know when you and I were talking about, like, for you, that really hit home specifically because we just had a recent event and you did go through some of that, probably a little bit more so than I did because you were a bit closer to the event and on the planning side and the organization and that sort of thing. So So, it was quite relatable for you because it was just so recent.
Well, I mean, I think in general that topic was a lot more closer to home, because I think I've been a bit vocal in the past couple of sessions about having a challenging year, and I'm not shying away from that. But I think it is very important to voice out that no matter what industry you are in, especially if it's the world like arts and fashion and media, where you're always in quote unquote the like public eye, and what you do, it's not like, I don't want to say what you do doesn't matter, because it matters, but it also has an impact in the world that you're in and even outside that world. And eventually, if you don't address certain issues, it starts building up, and everybody manages things very, very differently. Everybody has a different way to manage stress. Some are very good at it. Some are good at managing stress and being calm at things, but then they build it up internally, and then that becomes a source of anxiety. Or some people are just naturally prone to be overly anxious, and that's just how they're built, but they don't even get to realize that until they start going in these different situations, and they're told certain things, or they're supposed to act a certain way, and then they start feeling very uncomfortable with that, and they're like, well, but this is what I'm supposed to do, because if I don't do this, people will judge me for this, and then that just starts building up, and then that releases a whole different side of a person, which is why I said that given our last two sessions, this sort of topic, anxiety, stress, mental health, has hit quite close to home, and I think it's important, and we should talk about it.
Well, I think a lot more people go through it than we believe or want to believe, because I think a lot of people deal with it quietly in the confines of their own room or their home, or they're sometimes not even sharing with their closest family or closest friends, because a lot of people will feel ashamed about it. They'll feel like, well, if I share that, then I'm being weak, and if I'm being weak, then people are not going to take me seriously, and if they're not going to take me seriously, then I can't do what I do and be out there and make waves, because then no one's gonna think that I'm capable, right?
And that's the mindset that has to change now, especially. And I mean, I'm not saying one industry is better than the other. I'm not saying that.
I don't think this is irrelevant of industry. Like, we're talking about this industry because this is the industry we're involved with. But this translates, whether you're in the corporate world, whether you're in the arts, whether you're in sports, whether you're in, it doesn't matter. Like, people go through stresses and dealing with situations and having anxiety for whatever their triggers are.
But see, that's so there is, and I think the reason why this topic is kind of almost like, I wouldn't say frowned upon, but people don't want to be very vocal about it, because yes, we have our everyday stresses, and we have, certain situations that could put you in a mode of being anxious. Like, for example, when you and I talk outside our working, world, you sometimes will message me in very short, things. And that's when I know, like, okay, either he's busy at work, or he's stressed out, or he's anxious. But that's just your normal, you know what I mean? You're just having like a heavy day at work. It does not mean you are a person who's constantly anxious or constantly stressed, right, or it doesn't like trigger you that much. Now,
that's also part of time management.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking more from a personality point of view, right? Or even just who you are as a person. Like, when I plan events, overall, I'm very calm at handling any risk management, anything that happens. Even if it's not what's going according to plan, I can still deal with it. It does not bother me that way. But from an overall perspective, I'm a person who has battled anxiety when I was a lot younger. I'm now still going through it at a whole different level. And then I'm at a point where I am trying to understand what my triggers are and how that affects, but it's also my personality, like who I am, like how I view things, how I talk to people, what's black and white for me and what's not black and white for me. And that's very different from, so many other people. So when you start, and this is something that's really not talked about, is that when you start realizing that you feel different, or when you start questioning, things to yourself, like, oh, like I walked in this room and I can sense this person doesn't like me, but oh my God, no, it's like all in my head, or like why am I waking up at 6 like panicking on something that's not there? It's almost told to us that, well, it's all on your head. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just overthinking. You're just being over dramatic. But actually, no, you're not. There is something called a personality disorder that deals with many different areas. Like, you are actually mixing people who can suffer from a bit of depression, like a bit of anxiety, a bit of emotional. I wouldn't say immaturity, but they develop late in certain things. But when you don't understand it, and there's no resources for you, you start getting labeled as something because you don't know how to express yourself. When you don't know how to express yourself, you start getting very, very frustrated. So something normal can be a trigger to someone because they just don't understand it, and they're also told not to talk about it, or they're told to like be quiet, like shun, right?
Well, it's like how some people say, so why wouldn't you think about that? It's just common sense. Like, I hate that phrase. I use it sometimes too, because sometimes it's just like, it just comes to your mind, and that's
absolutely. I've done it too.
But it's like, well, maybe it's common sense to you in that situation because it's a norm to you, and you know how to manage or deal or navigate through that. But for some people, what they consider to be common sense may be very foreign to others, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just also the way we interact and judge what we consider to be common sense, or what we consider to be normal, what we consider to be being over dramatic, or and to an extent, I think it's also in the presentation and the wording. Like, in certain situations, someone may be overreacting or maybe managing it incorrectly, but the issue is the way that's judged. Because if what you also have to think about is, if someone's managing something in a specific way, they're doing that from some trigger somewhere in their mind or their system or experience, or it's derived from somewhere. It's not coming from just, I'm gonna overreact because it feels good. Like, no one feels good in that situation, right? So I think it's also trying to understand, if a person's acting in a specific way, or they're managing something in a way that you think is odd, or you think is inappropriate or over the top, or whatever the case is, I think at that point, if that's the sensation you're feeling about that person, that's when you, as the person who's judging, has almost got to take a step back and say, well, why am I feeling that? Because maybe it's normal to me, but why is that person reacting like that? And what is the trigger or cause for them to be reacting like that? And try to understand it from their perspective. One of the things I always try to do is, even if it's a situation with a family member or a friend or at work or whatever the case, I'm always going to try my best. I mean, you can only do so much because sometimes your mind is already skewed or has a bias, but I always try my best to understand the other person's perspective as much as I can. Or if not, ask questions so I don't assume. Because everybody is entitled to a viewpoint, an opinion, or a way to manage or deal with things. And sometimes their thought process may not be yours. And sometimes, and not somebody, you have to also accept the fact that you're not the one who's always right. And a lot of people do that. For me, one of the biggest challenges, and I don't really talk about this, for me is one of the challenges is I'm terrible at confrontation. I'm not good with it. I fumble for words. I don't know how to, I feel like I don't know how to navigate through it. So for me, recognizing that that's a challenge for me, I take a step back in those situations, and we've had that before. And if we've had a disagreement or something that I don't like, where I feel it could easily turn into an argument, or it could turn into something that's not comfortable for either of us. I'm the kind of person where I'm like, I'm going to take a step back from this. I'm going to collect my thoughts, and then come back to the table. So where it's almost like a discussion versus an argument. Like, okay, here's what I felt in that situation, why I stepped away, and why I disagreed, and here's why I think this was the right course of action, or whatever the discussion was. And then I'll ask to understand what the other person is thinking, because sometimes in the moment when you're feeling those things, it's going to come out incorrectly. It's going to come out almost like an argument, or it's going to come out, you're very likely going to say something that's inappropriate. And this goes back to your conversation, because in that moment, if I'm addressing it in that moment where it's happening, that's when the anxiety for me is kicking in, and I'm not in my senses. Like, I'm not comfortable. Like, my stomach is in knots, and I'm like, and like, that's what's going on inside your head. But it's not. You're not going to come out in an effective in a manner that's going to be communicated effectively. So I try to do that very consciously, and take a step back and then address the situation when I'm prepared. Now, is that going to always work? No, because some people they are in the moment and they need to have that discussion right away. Because you have to remember, like, there's always two sides. So if I'm feeling that anxiety, that person's feeling the anxiety too. And some people, they need to hash out that anxiety immediately so they can get through it in their mind, because it's like, well, they don't want to go to bed with it, or they don't want to have that conversation later because it's so big that it's going to eat them alive unless they discuss it right then and there. We have Billy in the shot.
She's like staring at me right now.
Are you going to come on the couch now?
No.
She's like, you guys are crazy. No one's paying attention to me. But sorry, so for me, I mean, again, it's different ways of managing, but I think that goes back to individual cases, individual people, and those and how those circumstances are dealt with because everybody reacts differently and manages their situations differently.
Right, but and you're very good at that. So, and I've actually learned that from you to step back when there's something that I know, like, I'm going to.
The problem is a lot of times people take that as people being cold.
You know what? Okay, here's the thing though. I don't take it as being cold. I think sometimes it is the smartest thing to do.
Because you know me a little bit now, and you know what I'm doing. But if someone who I don't have, like, I'm not this close with, or have this kind of interaction, but they're not gonna, like, if I were to do that with them, and sorry, I'm jumping all over the place because I'm almost to a degree contradicting myself, because this is the experiences I've been through.
Yeah.
In some instances I have to do this, and I'm gonna take a step back. But if that person is not as cognizant about understanding you just as you're trying to understand them, and they're only thinking, well, why are they not talking to me right now? Like, this is bothering me. Why are they not paying attention to me and dealing with it right now? Because I got to get this out of my system. I got to deal with it. I'm almost doing the same thing on the opposite side and saying, well, I can't deal with it, so I'm going to take a step back, not being considerate of the fact that maybe they need to talk about it at that moment, which I'm not a fan of. But these are like the dynamics that sometimes create that challenge and that conflict.
And that's also, again, like, understanding. And that's where the whole mindfulness comes in of understanding people. Like, yes, there have been times when you and I have not, agreed, let's put it that way. We've also had our moments, and, I'm the type of person that I have to, like, let it out right away. Because for me, like, if I don't talk about things that...
Let's talk about when that happens and what happens in those situations.
I've learned to step back a bit.
What happens when you deal with it right away, Rashi?
You don't talk to me for like 2 days.
Not just with me, in general.
Actually, no. In general, I've gotten a lot better, because, like I was saying, I've taken that positive quality from you when someone annoys me. No. I've taken that quality from you when someone, like, triggers me. I've learned to, like, step back.
Yeah, but that's not about. That's also you recognizing what works for you and doesn't work for you. Like, maybe for you, reacting in the moment is the best way to deal with it.
Sometimes, yes. But I've also realized now that happens to me when I feel I'm not able to express things at the times, like, things that are bothering me, which, yes, a bit of it is my fault, because I then tell myself that, hey, this may seem such a minor issue to this person, but if I talk about it or question it or ask, that person will think I'm trying to start a problem. Again, it's all based on that whole, like, bias, that whole, like, but she is so, like, blunt or so, like, upfront, or, like, you know what I mean?
So we've had this discussion off camera too, and sometimes it's not about ignoring the issue that's in your mind, or the challenge, or whatever that's on your mind, but it's also in the way it's presented, because you can have the same result, sometimes probably better if you're not. I'm not saying you, like, in specific, but in general, any one of us, if we're cognizant of who we're talking to and how it's presented to them, so that you can achieve a result that's beneficial to both.
Yes, and yes, we've had those conversations, and then we
both done. Like, I know I've dealt with situations wrong, and so I'm talking about within us, but that same thing translates into other friendships, relationships.
Absolutely. But again, like going back to my point, right? Like, yes, with you and I, because we worked so much with each other, not only on our podcast, but on, other
multiple things, yeah.
So many things that we've learned to kind of understand each other's personalities. So like if things are bothering me and I don't talk to you about it right away, it's gonna eventually build up.
Yes.
So, and then the explosion happens. And
Correct.
and I've said it like a few times that I'm waiting to talk about it, I'm waiting to like talk about it, but things keep adding up, and then for me there's only so much, and then something will like trigger a whole like mountain of stuff. And then I've learned that with you, that if I need your full attention, I have to like literally wait till you're not like saving the world to actually like give me that attention. I can talk to you properly about it. And sometimes our timings are just not in sync because we have lives, right? But that's a normal. I shouldn't say the word normal, but that's just how you and I have understood and been
our dynamic. Yes.
Yeah, and think now. A person who is constantly suffering or prone to suffer anxiety or depression at a different level, it's now starting to understand who they are as a person and what triggers them. So I've started to learn
that, right? Because, okay, so you, for example,
I battle with anxiety, but mine's a chronic. Actually, yeah. I'm actually coming out with this. For me, it's so we're 2019, 2010. So about 8 to 9 years. Yeah, 8 to 9 years. Longer, almost 10 years actually. I battled with, and I think I spoke about this in one of our podcasts, with the eating disorder, but that was caused because of the whole anxiety thing, right? Now, when your anxiety is at that level where it changes the chemistry in your body, like it does affect every part of you.
It physically affects you.
Your like food intake, your like sleep and all that stuff. It's beyond the usual, oh my God, like this is gonna be stressful for me, or it's beyond a personality trait. It is actually,
you can't even control it.
And
it takes over.
It does take over you. We've had the conversation where I'll be like, I'm so exhausted today. I feel very drained out because this happened. And it's on a larger scale, a third person looking in will be, but that's such a minor thing. Why did this conversation trigger that reaction?
But not to you.
But not to me. Because again, it's me now working on what are my anxiety triggers.
And how does your mind process it in order to deal with it differently than getting anxious?
Exactly. And now how do I start managing myself? And then how do I start having conversations with people who are very close to me? And like I tell them, see, like when you talk to me in a certain way, or when you say phrases like this, or when I feel that this is happening, that triggers something in me, because that's my insecurity, that's my fear. I've had it since I was a child due to whatever reason. And now this is what causes me to be a certain way.
Right. But I think everybody, so for some, it's, things are more common, they have more regularly, but I think everybody has a degree of that no matter who they are.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I know,
in the world we live in.
You're talking about, I know because I've been through it, and I've had that where I literally can't get out of bed, and I can't eat, and I can't think, I can't, like, I don't want to communicate, I don't want to talk to anyone. So I know those feelings, and when that hits you, nothing else, like nothing can change that in that moment. You have to just, your body has to go through it when you're that deep into it.
And you know what it is, when you're that deep into it, what besides the physical impact that's having on you, it's actually you cannot process certain things. Like you start feeling very hazy and cloudy. So like for example, that day when we actually just went an entire day without talking to each other, and you are surprised not getting my 1,000 messages that day, and you out of concern asked like if I was okay, and I actually wasn't. I was having a conversation, and I won't get into the details of that conversation, but that triggered something where it ended up me being in the shower howling, like as if, and it wasn't me crying, it was actually like it sounded like a wounded animal, and I didn't even realize I was making that noise, and I was curled up on the tub with the shower running. And I recognized that because I think my mom must have thought I was crying, because she did come up to me afterwards, but I didn't even realize I was there howling in that much pain, and then trying to like get up and get out of the shower and not hurt myself more. And then that heaviness that comes into you, the fact that you can't see clearly, that you cannot control it, and if at that moment someone's trying to talk to me or calm me, it's actually worse. That I start shaking, I start losing it more. But those feelings
So in that moment, like when someone is trying to console or calm or whatever word you want to use, and you said that it almost negatively affects you in that situation. What about that in that situation negatively affects you? Like why is that from what you can figure out in your mind?
Because I think it goes back to what your triggers are that causes that fear that is technically anxiety and that takes over you. So first of all, if it's a person or a team or a third party that's linked to the first party that caused that initial reaction, at that moment, even if you know it, but at that moment, that third party is also almost quote unquote like the enemy, right? And I'm not saying they are,
but in that moment,
in that moment, they're also that. So instead of seeing it from a clear perspective, whatever they're saying, you start feeling that, oh my God, they are going to trick me, or they are out to get me, or like whatever the paranoia that sets in, right?
I don't want to use a common phrase, but it's almost like the victim mentality.
Yes.
Does that accurately define it or help to define it?
I'm
trying to put something into like a context of like.
I hate the word victim.
I know, and
mentality.
And that's why I was a bit like hesitant to use it,
because yes, it sounds like you're a victim, but at the same time you're not, because you're not sitting there like I don't spend my days, going like, oh my God, this terrible thing is like happening to me and I can't do anything about it. I think I'm taking measures to see, okay, I'm in this situation, something has triggered it this year or whatever the case is. Let me start tracing my steps. Let me get the help and the resources I need so I can get out of it.
Right.
Now, someone who would be considered having a victim mentality would not bother with these steps, right? They would not be vocal about it. They would not talk about it. They would not come to their close friends and say, I am going through this. I'm going to have days where I'm good. I'm going to have days where I'm bad. This is what I need. And like in this situation, and it sounds so simple, but a lot of people don't realize it, the person just needs a lot of love. And when I say love, I'm not talking the, oh my God, I love you, you're great, you're amazing. No, it's not that. It's the small things.
So it's not positive reinforcement? Is that not what?
It's not even about positive. Well, I mean, when you're so deep into it, someone telling you you're amazing at what you're doing doesn't help, because your mind is like, okay, if I'm so amazing, why am I going through this? Why am I feeling like this? Why is this happening to me? Why are 10 people mad at me, right?
This is why, and again, I'm not trying to sound insensitive, but this is why I ask about the victim mentality, because to me the victim mentality is, why is this happening to me?
But again, it's
because am I misunderstanding that? See, I'm not pinpointing you. I'm just saying in general to understand if that's the thought process. And again, I'm not saying that it can be controlled or not controlled. That's not the question here. I'm trying to give some sort of context.
But the reason I don't agree with the word victim mentality is like, okay, and again, I'm getting very personal on this, because this is a topic that,
because I think commonly that's how people would perceive it.
And that's what we need to change.
Right.
So, for example, when I talk about a project that is outside of Elevated Grapes and outside of what you and I do, but I always talk to you about those projects because I turn to you for advice and management, or just I love sharing
ideas. We're bouncing
ideas, right?
Yeah.
And when you tell me, oh my God, that's amazing, you're like gonna kill it, whatever. On a good day, for me, that's like, yeah, this is like my friend telling me this. Like, of course I'm gonna kill it. But on a day,
I also tell you times when I think it's gonna suck.
That's also very true.
Yeah, I'm like, that's a terrible idea. Don't do it.
But then on a day where I'm having like a high-low almost, or I'm trying to manage what I'm going through, and I tell you, oh, this happened, and this person said I'm doing great, and you tell me, yeah, you're doing great. But that for me is like, but I'm not doing great, because if I was doing great, why do I feel like 10 people that I may know may not like me? Or why does it feel that, so-and-so person has not spent time with me? Or why does it feel like I'm like going through this emotion?
So it's interesting, because it's almost like in that situation, you're you pile, and if I sound insensitive, it's because I'm trying to
Yeah,
say,
absolutely. It's
like,
different.
it's almost like you're piling on things that are irrelevant to that specific topic or conversation in your mind to convince yourself that you're not, or not even to convince yourself, but that your mind is convincing you that, well, you're not what this person is saying.
But see,
So
that's
sorry, not
that's
that
the
you're
battle.
not you're consciously doing it, but maybe it's naturally happening.
But that's the
organic,
battle with people who are going through that, right? Because because something is triggering something from the past or what. So, but for example, if you were to like tell me, hey Arshi, that's great, and let's say we're meeting up for like our like strategy like session, now, and let's say that day or that week I've not had a good week, for example, and something, and this is not a hint or anything, I'm just saying in general. Let's say if you pick a
I'm getting a
place,
notepad. I'm writing this down, or I'll just listen to this podcast.
or like let's
Later.
say for example you pick a place that you know I love normally going to, or I enjoy that. See, for me at this moment in this mindset, that action of you picking a place that I would like, or you telling me something that you've not told me in like in like a while, or like, hey, let's go watch a movie or something, that's something so casual, that actually has the positive effect, because it's like, oh my god, this person values, cherishes, and this action that they did shows they
watched that one
care.
here.
Yeah, sorry. So they
Hey guys, we're taking a quick break just to remind you where you can find our podcast online.
You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Tunes.
Apple Music, but you know it, you call it Apple Tunes.
Whatever.
Right. You can also find us on TuneIn, on Google Play, and of course Instagram when we do it the first Tuesday of every month.
And Facebook, here and there.
Here and there.
Here and there.
So thanks for tuning in, and now back to our podcast.
So instead of your words now, those actions, because it's so subtle, but has a huge impact.
Got you.
Right? And these are things, and it's
But everybody's different. I mean, that's for in your situation, but
In
but
my
it's
situation,
But
in-
what's interesting about what you just said is you've also been able to pinpoint what works for you and doesn't work
well,
for you.
it wasn't easy. Like
Yes.
I'm
That's
going.
what I mean. That's an achievement on its own. And again, for those that are listening and understanding and not understanding the depth of this, it's like small little movements are huge achievements in this situation, because what may seem like, well, okay, so you figure that out, like, big shit, so do it, and do more things like that so you feel better. But it goes way beyond that, because to enable one to recognize it, but to just do it now is another huge challenge.
So
If I'm understanding correctly.
yes, and you're right on that, and you know, there like people who suffer anxiety, people who suffer depression, or people who also suffer borderline personality disorders. Now, that's not to say they have mood swings or they're bipolar or things like that. It just means
Even
that
if they are, I mean, that is a degree of it, right?
it's to a degree, but what's not been spoken about is the simple, borderline personality disorder. That's simply a person who can deal with being prone to having a addictive behavior, being prone to anxiety, being prone to depression, being prone to a few things all at once, where it's not that hardcore, but it's still not so subtle, right? It's not an everyday thing. You're in that
I think
gray area all the time.
Anything that's, where there's things that are in moderation, there's things on an extreme. Anything that you're doing to a bit of an extreme should be something you think about, because why are you doing it?
Well, but see now,
It's not wrong or right, but there's got to be a reason for it. It's self-exploratory to understand yourself.
It's not about being that's
Self-awareness, yes.
you have to be self-aware. But what I'm trying to say is that people who go through these sort of even whether it's depression, whether even if it's anxiety, let's just take these two terms for now because they are the most common ones.
Mm-hmm.
What a lot of people don't seem to recognize is that when a person comes and says that I feel this emptiness, I feel this void in me, or no matter what I do, I'm not satisfied, it does not mean that they are ungrateful. It does not mean that they are not aware of the good that's in their life. They themselves are trying to understand, why is this making me feel like that? Right. And that becomes a battle. Imagine every single day you are aware of your house and your friends and the food you eat and the great things that you do, but at the same time you still feel like you're lacking something, or you still feel like you're not appreciated enough. And even though you are aware of it, but you have to battle within yourself that why am I feeling like this.
But I think there's also a level of accomplishment that has to be recognized if you're going through all those things and you're able to recognize that these are the things that are going on. Like you're
Absolutely.
aware of the fact that I'm actually behaving like this. I'm aware of the fact that this is how I deal with it. I mean, it's not changing that mindset and changing that behavior is a whole different ballgame. But a lot of people haven't reached that stage or have that cognitive ability to be aware, like you're suggesting, and that's a whole different degree of that same level of depression, anxiety,
and that's
illness, whatever you want to call it, whatever they're challenged with, and it's such a long path from there to even just being aware. You know what I mean? Like that alone is a huge sense of accomplishment. To someone who's not facing, it's like, well, okay, but I realize things every single day. Like I don't understand why this is such a big deal, but it is a big deal because the fact that they're so far into the way that their mind or thought process works, and for them to be able to say, okay, well, I know I'm doing this, and I know this is happening, and I'm cognizant of that, is a huge step.
See, we live in a world where we aren't allowed to be weak, technically.
Not at all.
We aren't allowed to be.
You got to present like you're on the go.
Yeah, we aren't
you
allowed
gotta present
to
like
be.
You're like the boss all the time. You know.
Yeah, or we're in a world where if you own up for like first of all, it takes a lot to own up to something because you are automatically judged, and then you're also in a situation or in a world where, okay, let's say you own up to something and you're like, yes, this happened and this is how I reacted and I moved on from it, like, and all this stuff. Now let's say something else happens where you may get upset about something, or you may react in a way that's very normal to a human being in terms of like being upset at whatever makes them upset, or whatever does not align with them. We are in such a judgmental world where that label comes upon them right away, like, oh, of course this person reacted this because this person is wrong, without even hearing that person, right? So like these factors do not make it easy for anyone to sit and take time and say, am I really going through something, or is this just who I am, or am I not able to express myself properly, right? And that's the thing, like we're not given that time to reflect on ourselves, and then when we are pushed and you do end up in a situation that forces you to either shut it and ignore it, or you realize that, okay, I cannot keep going down this path because something is not right, like the feelings that come in, that fear, that whole like but why did this happen? And it's sometimes it's fear that you can't control, right? Because people think, oh, but like she's like, okay, like for example, many people assume that I am not scared of anything. And I know you've also told me that, like, oh, okay, like, and I say, yeah, like, what's the worst that's gonna happen to me, right? I'm just gonna go like go this and do that. So that perception is there, but at the same time, a lot of my anxiety internally, for me, certain things are my biggest fears, like my like relationships with people, or if I mess up on something, my fear to go own up to it is there not because I have an ego and that's what people don't realize. It's because, but that label is there on me, that you know what, Rashi's the type of person, because if things are not done the way she wants it, then she didn't get upset about it, right? Versus actually giving the chance to see the other path where, hey, she's normal, like she's just like, she's understanding what makes her upset. She's learning to manage that better, but at the same time, she's a human being. She isn't that upset.
It's also to a degree like
right?
You're managing internally the fear of the consequence, because you're like, I don't want to deal with the consequence of that, so I'd rather deal with being upfront with it, so I don't have to deal with the consequence, because dealing with the consequence of it going wrong or not being the way it's supposed to be is almost harder in your mind. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it it does, and that fear is there again because people are not that forgiving anymore. Most people are not, and people are in such a shallow world where it's like, hey, if not you, there's 10
Right.
other people.
Everyone's replaceable. You're expendable.
Yeah, and it's sad because I don't believe that. I believe that people are not replaceable. I believe the relationships you have with them cannot be, replaced by somebody else doing that. Like,
Well, because they're all unique. Because you're not going to interact with someone else the same way you interact with that one.
And-
They can never. It can never be that exact same.
well, but
So you have to value what that is in your life.
but that's the thing, right? So I think when you come to that, and I recently, like, I was talking to a bunch of people. Actually, that was yesterday. We were having a conversation, and they asked me, "How's your week?" And I was like, "It was actually pretty bad because I, not like besides the incident that just happened where I was like 2 days I was in a pretty bad state. Prior to that entire week, I was still on a high of like being anxious the entire time. And then I said that I'm also working on figuring out what are my triggers, who I am as a person, my personality traits, why certain things are more important to me than others. And, I have 2, 3 close people that I actually want to start having these conversations with because they can understand where I'm coming from and why I'm, let's say, holding back on certain things or why am I being a certain way, but then they can also manage me in the future because that way it's fair to them. So if they see me getting upset on something or if they see that this is going to trigger her, at least even as a friend or as a family, they can like step in and be like, okay, now she needs to like get away from this. And that's what you need when you're going through stuff like that, or like you're prone to it. You have to also, and it takes a lot to come up to a person and just be like,
But you're also being
this is
proactive
who I
about it,
am.
which is such a huge step. Again, I'm pinpointing some of these items as you're saying them, because I think for anyone who's going through them or going through something similar, maybe not as bad or worse or whatever the case is, having these little, they're not even little steps. Like I think this is a huge step, but being able to confront it because you're taking it almost head on before it goes and gets the better of you again. You're taking it head on to say, okay, well, these are the people that are important to me. These are the people that I have these kind of relationships with, and these are the people that know me best, and I'm gonna have the regular interaction with. And obviously, you don't want any of that to be impacted or messed up based on any of things that happen in your mind or your anxiety. So you're taking it head on. So be like, this about me. You know that these things are gonna happen, and whatever those conversations take, and whatever you're looking to address with those individual people, but you're doing it proactively, right? And that's a huge step. And then whether someone doesn't understand that or not, like it's such a massive step to be able to A, recognize, and then B, actually deal with it. Recognizing is one step. Okay, I know these things now. Okay, cool. I gotta work on them myself. You can only do so much by yourself because there's factors outside of you that you can't control.
Right, and that goes.
And then that's where your your close relationships, because that's your next step. That's your next outside of your own little bubble. That's your next layer or sphere.
And it's your relationships that understand. Like, Sunday when and it was a family affair. Let's put it that way. I was in no condition to come and attend. Like I was not in any condition to come and attend. I was like still pretty bad. But see, at the same time in my mind, it's like, this is very important. I have to be there. But now when I'm there, I cannot let the world know, and I cannot spoil an event that I'm going through something. I'm gonna, let the world know about it. Then it's again putting on that smile. It's again putting on that public face and hiding yourself internally and being out there, and nobody had any idea, right? And then when you get back home, I think I literally must have, like, I was in bed, like, I think at 7:30 that night. Like, I left early too, like, quite early. What do you do? And then, again, that causes a part of anxiety, because then in your mind, you're thinking, oh my God, like, I didn't stay till the end. I didn't stay to help. Like, what is this person thinking? All that stuff. Or like, is my friends gonna think there's something wrong with me, or like I'm a loser, or this, like, again, and
all those things start to
it just starts snowballing, right? Because so from one end you're taking the steps that you have to for yourself, but then from the other end, again, it's attacking you. So what do you do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because you're still dealing with it. It's not like it's gone away. Like
No, it's not.
It's still something that's a part of you and gives you that anxiety and takes over your system to a level that you can't even control.
So do you
and
fake all the time, or
and I
you
think
don't,
the
right?
other thing that people have to also understand is that, again, these are varying degrees for varying people. Like for someone who may face that same situation that you faced, they may think about that for a split second, be like, whatever, I don't give a shit, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
And you may, a person who deals with it, you may present yourself, be like, I'm cool, but internally, like we talked about earlier, these thoughts are running that deep in your mind or in your system to now create a physical, like you said earlier, chemical reaction internally where it's like you can't function even because they've gotten so deep in you, and whatever the triggers are, everybody's reasons and triggers or life experiences are what causes these scenarios, but they're so deep inside that you have no control.
And as
and that's when I'm talking about degrees.
Yeah, and then as you start figuring out your triggers, it's important to let people close to you know what your triggers are. Like
But what if, so there's, if the relationships around you are from those that are understanding and supportive and helping you work through these situations, what if they're not? What if they're, well, like, you're just like, you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? This isn't like, no one does this. Like it goes back to the same mentality. Well, no one does this. No one thinks like this. Like, why are you like that? You got to like figure your stuff out.
There are some people in my life that I've recently put a distance with, and I wouldn't say cutting them out completely, but at least for now.
Well, you also it's all, maybe not cutting them out, but it's also how you interact or manage with them. So one thing, if you're going through stuff like that, whether it feels minor or not, it is about going and getting the help. And I'm not saying go get on meds. In fact, I actually do not believe in medication, because for me that's a very temporary fix. That's just like at that moment, it's just there to like help you balance your like chemicals, and that's it. But it doesn't take away the problem. It does not take away what's causing that way, right? But some people need the meds even.
Yes. Again,
to get to a state where they can actually think and do the recognizing and do the awareness piece.
So I apologize. I actually should give some context to that statement. So years ago when I went through this for the first time, and it wasn't as severe as now, I actually was on medication. And I wasn't, and that was all that was given, right? It was just like, here you go, let me just like have a checkup on you, once every 4 weeks, and here's meds. That was really it.
Yeah. That's not dealing with the challenge. The issue.
Now, because of the way I'm working on myself every single day, if I look back those 10 years, if I'd done what I was doing today, I'm not saying my issue would have gone away. I'm saying I would have been managing it a lot better.
Differently, correct.
And I know that I'm going to be prone to this almost for the rest of my life. But I also know that I want to live a very healthy life. I want to be happy all the time. And I want to,
have the positive experiences. Accomplish the things you're looking to accomplish,
and do all what I want to do without having this battle, right? But then for that, I have to learn to manage now what gets me into these situations, and it's not.
But that's an ongoing learning experience for yourself, because there may be things that you don't even recognize right now that you will recognize at some point.
Yeah, and that's why I say, right, like
all of us. Sorry, again, I say you when I'm talking to you, but I don't mean you.
No, I know, but
we all have that exposure. Like I do that too, right? There's things that I recognize all the time that I'm like, okay, well, I have to change the way I manage this because it's not healthy or beneficial to me or the people I'm dealing with.
Right, but see now, so going back to your point is that what happens if your circle is not supportive of you?
Yes.
Sometimes, And I'm not saying go cut your circle off completely. That's not my intention with this statement. It's just that in this moment when you recognize that you need to work on yourself, sometimes even the people that's in your life, they may have good intentions for you, but they're not managing you very well, and they're actually causing more anxiety or depression or whatever it is that you're going through at that moment. And that's when you need to say, you know what, I need to, put a distance. I need to, for a while, not deal with this, because at some point you have to put yourself first.
Because you effectively can't deal with that situation when you're faced with it, or those people, or those those interactions, because you yourself haven't figured out yourself how to manage through those. And you need to sort that out first.
Exactly. And again, like the your friends may have the best intentions for you, absolutely, but sometimes what they're saying turns out to be your trigger, because again, it's going back to
understanding your triggers.
What causes you to be a certain way or react to a certain thing, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And some people don't believe in mental illness. They actually don't.
They don't. They think it's a made up thing nowadays to give people excuses to act certain ways, which it's not. Hi, Billy.
Hi, Billy.
Come here.
I love Billy, by the way. She makes me very happy.
So, this is Billy for those that are watching versus listening on our streaming sites. And she is now in the podcast.
Yay, Billy's in the podcast. Can't you like meow to the mic?
Can you meow? Can you meow? Can you meow? You want to talk to the mic?
She's just smiling.
She's like, let go of me. Okay, you can go if you like. Or you can sit if you like, whatever you like.
Or you can come here if you like. She's like staring at me.
She likes to sit in people's laps when they're on the couch. You got to sit in a certain manner so she can.
Okay, I'm gonna so do that now.
So she can sit.
I'm gonna try.
Make herself into a ball. I think she wants to.
Oh, okay.
Right on the edge. That's cool. Sit on the edge. We all.
I'm gonna try this.
We all live life on the edge sometimes. That's good.
I love her.
But the problem is now I can't move until she's ready to go. Because now she's comfortable.
And you know what? She just keeps staring at me when I'm there. I feel very loved by her.
Yeah, she's like, what the heck is going on over here? what is all this stuff? She's totally looking at the screen where the audio volumes are, and she thinks it's a game.
God, yeah. But on a serious note, right? Like, yes, sometimes also the industry that you're in does play a role to it, because pressure does add to it. So if you're already someone who is battling certain things, pressure does not make it easy.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. I know we've gone a little bit longer than we wanted to, but this is important. You know, you're in a very high-paced, high-stressed environment, putting together fashion-based events. Whether it's a fashion show, whether it's something for vendors, whether it's a fashion shoot, whatever the case, they're very high-paced, very high-stressed, because there's a lot of moving parts happening at one time, and you're under the gun, and you're in front of a lot of people all the time. People are watching, saying, okay, well, how's she gonna get through this? Because I don't know how to deal with it, and you have to manage it because you have no other choice. Like, what's the option? Like, you almost have to come up with in that moment the options that are available to you, go through the pros and cons quickly in your head, and make a decision and move on and be okay with the decision. And if you're the kind of person that has the high level of anxiety and has the you're not confrontational, or you're not, you got to put things into silos and figure them out. Like, how do you effectively manage through all that to get yourself through those in a calm manner to get the job done?
So I'm gonna give two examples actually, because two incidents has happened very recently. One which is about being calm during this, and one where I actually was not very calm during this, and
Sure.
that's been
actually great.
a while.
Yeah.
So when we did Your Corp, initially, at the beginning when things were not going as I wanted to, I reached out to you, and you jumped in, you helped, and then I was downstairs dealing with everything. I knew things would still flow okay despite the hiccups, but at that moment, yes, I was a bit like stressed out, and I reached out to you guys to help me and all that stuff. After the event, and we've had this conversation where I was not happy at all, and I remember us saying that, but overall you did a good job. Like, overall these people are happy. Like, our feedback was phenomenal. Like,
Right.
given what we went through, it was a
What we were
phenomenal
dealing with.
feedback.
I mean, not everybody saw
Absolutely.
that. We know what's going on, but not everybody saw it.
Yeah, and but then the fashion show was executed. I think pretty much flawlessly in terms
Yes.
of like the fashion and stuff like that. So stuff that had to be done was done. I was obviously internally freaking out, but I've trained myself to be on autopilot for these things and just deal with it. Now, another incident happened where I'm working on a series of fashion shoots for a company, and I had been with them, a few months back. Sorry, I'd been with them for like a couple of years, and then I stopped working with them. I changed my roles now, and it was so when I stopped working with them, I'd actually done my first shoot for them, and it didn't go exactly as I planned. And I always felt that wasn't my best at all, and that I was the laughing stock of that whole thing, which was actually not the case. People still talk about that shoot now.
But it goes back
which,
to what you said earlier. What we were talking about earlier. It's almost like these things happen in your head.
Yeah.
Like control your mind, because these are happening in your head. They're not actually.
I
happening
don't
in real
know
life.
if you recall, but you had gotten the magazine first, and you had opened up to my shoot back in January or February, and you had shown it to me, and I was like crying. I was like, this is ridiculous. No one's gonna take me seriously and all that stuff. And you're like, it looks good. It looks good. It looks good. Like, nobody knows, right? Like what you went through to get the shoot done, but it looks good in the magazine and all that stuff. I knew that it was like, I was like, this is my most crappiest work ever. Forward 6-8 months later, I'm back with them now, doing a series of shoots with them. And the first shoot now that I did, it did not go according to plan because of other moving factors.
Sure.
But see, in my mind at that time, the pressure from my last shoot with them, which was
it's in your mind.
which in my head was not successful, despite being told otherwise by the like everybody that we know in this industry. Besides being told otherwise, besides talking to the main person, and the main person telling me that it was actually a really good shoot. Like, who are you listening to? You know what I mean?
Which, by the way, it was.
Thank you. But when I was doing this first shoot, again, things were going wrong. Like, the models were not, like, one of them was not what we signed up for. Our call time was like 2 a.m. and we still were like running late. The clothing was not what I expected, despite having, like, as a stylist and a creative person, I did what I was told to do. I did my job. I gave my input. I'm on set. Nothing's going according to plan. All my ideas, despite being approved, was being shut down. So in my mind, so this time my emotions were actually on my face, because my pressure from my last shoot, and suddenly everything's going wrong, and I really wanted this to be a high-end fashion shoot, right? So after we went home and stuff like that, the main person called me and was like, listen, you cannot let your emotions be seen on your face, even if things are not going your way. Yes, like during the shoot, I had to go to him and be like, I thought we approved all of this. Why are all my ideas being shut down suddenly? And yes, that's his role of stepping in and sorting it out, because I did what, as a stylist, I did what I was told to do. But then I see that now comes down to managing your anxiety, and then it comes down to owning up. And in my conversation, I said that, you know what, I let the pressure of today, of being shut down by a designer, and pressure of my last shoot get to me, because I really wanted this to be amazing.
You weren't thinking about the shoot at hand. You were thinking about these factors that were playing in your mind that gave you the extra level of anxiety, gave you the extra level of stress.
Yeah, and
so it wasn't specifically the work you were doing in the moment that wasn't stressing you as much as all these other factors that were in your mind.
Exactly, because here's the thing, right? That I'm when you do a fashion shoot, especially when it's outdoors, or when there's so many moving parts, you can come as planned as possible.
Of course.
Sometimes it just doesn't go as well.
It happens in shoots, it happens in shows, it happens at events,
and sometimes it goes as perfect as as perfect
it's
as
butter.
things.
It's like
Exactly.
smooth. Yes.
Right? So and anyone would be like, yeah, but Rashi, you're used to this. Like, this should, like, you shouldn't even have that happening on set that day, because this is like second nature to you. This goes back to someone who is aware they're going through something, who that's when certain triggers start.
I don't. But even that mentality that you used to, like
other things.
I host a lot of events, and as much as I do it, weekend and day in and day out, as much as you like, yes, it's a lot of it's second nature because okay. But what those experiences they don't necessarily, the experiences prepare you for managing situations that come up because okay, I've seen this before. I know if I do A, likely this will be the result. I know if I do B, likely this will be the result. It doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to work like that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to be 100% right with your decisions because you've done it a million times, right? You're also working with different moving parts. They're different people. They're different personalities. And again, we talk about anxiety, mental illnesses, all these sort of things. You don't know what that person is dealing with or going through as well, right? That you're working with or in that situation because they could be dealing with a whole set of other issues or challenges or coming to the situation with a different mindset that you've never dealt with before.
And see now, and I'm gonna say this. I'm not trying to generalize this statement, even though it may sound like this. I'm just saying this as a disclaimer. If you've noticed, there's a lot of people in the entertainment industry, in the fashion industry, in Hollywood. Let's go to Bollywood because it's very global. Yeah. They have now come out and voiced out that despite having everything they could possibly ask for, they go through depression, they go through anxiety. It is becoming so. Yeah, they voice it out. Some people take heed of it. Some people are like, well, they have everything they could possibly ask for. What are they complaining about?
Why are they doing the victim mentality? Why are they asking for more?
And that's the thing, right? But you're not asking for more. You're trying to understand within yourself.
But they say also like sometimes some of the happiest people are the ones that are going through the most. I mean, and you bring up, really sad situations like Robin Williams. Right?
Robin Williams was one that touched me the most.
Like it was like that was so heartbreaking in so many different ways because he brought so much joy to so many people in so many different ways. Yet, I can't even begin to imagine what he internally as an individual was going through for him to, for the way his life, sort of the direction it took. So I mean, we have to be mindful that there's these kind of situations are around people. Like all the time, and people that we're with all the time, and whether they're celebrities or not, like it's everywhere around us, and we have to be very mindful of those people.
See, from a young age, from a much younger age, one thing I've noticed about myself is that, and it's not that I have issues with people, but people in my life come and go, and I realized why they come and go. It's because sometimes.
What are you doing, Billy?
She's like happy. They come and go because sometimes you can sense other people what they're going through, or sometimes you don't know exactly what they're going through, but your presence makes a big difference, which is why I know you tease me about it sometimes too, like Rashi, like don't be a mom or like whatever it is, but sometimes you can see beyond that smile, you can see beyond what's going on in like through their eyes, or like, and it's such small things. I know I've been told over the years that even if these people are not prominent in my life, like I've helped them, I've made a difference, and I sometimes ask, what did I do? Like I didn't do anything, but just that.
Yeah, sometimes you don't realize the impact that you're having,
or just hearing them, or something small, or just like helping them jumpstart something. I don't need to be in touch with them every day, and I'm actually not in touch with a lot of people who've told me these things over the years, but now because I'm going through all of this, these are things that are coming back to me, and recently it's been more and more prominent that people are telling me things like that, and I do not believe in coincidence. I do believe that things do come aligned when it's all a reason, right? So if you are someone who is a bit self-aware of what you bring to the table or to your relationships or to the people in your life, even if you're going through your own battles, that is where, yes, it's very challenging because a part of you is like, I'm feeling this darkness. How can I help someone? Or why is this person in my life? Or am I annoying this person?
But it's also like managing or dealing with those situations. You gotta go, Billy. You gotta go, or are you sitting? Okay. It's almost like in those situations, you're more sensitive to what that person's going through because you know and are experiencing not the same things, but you're experiencing things of your own, and you can almost recognize things that that person's going through because you can see it because you know what that feels like, what that person may be going through.
But then what happens is that, and this is what I'm working on, is trying to be very mindful about a lot of things because I'm not good at it. That person may feel helpless to help you because no matter at that moment what they're doing, it's not helping you, and you're not trying to be ungrateful.
Of course, yeah,
but it's just not helping, right? It's sometimes when
it's tough sometimes as the person who's trying to be there for someone when you don't know what to do and how to help, and it can also become a very frustrating
situation.
And yeah, because like I have a couple of friends that that have different things that they're going through, and you want to be there for them in any way that you can support to help them work through whatever's going on with them. But it's like sometimes it's so challenging because it's no matter what you try, it doesn't work, and then you don't, and it gets frustrating because you don't know what to keep doing because you're not seeing a result. You're trying now, but then it's like it's almost like you're getting angry at them, but you're also getting angry at yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, well, I want to help them. Why am I not able to do anything to positively affect the situation of that person or those people? And it's very, very challenging being on the other side of that too. I mean, like we all go through things. Like I appreciate when people do things when I'm facing my challenges, but when you're trying to be there for someone, that's another challenge on its own, and helping them manage, because the last thing you want to do is create another trigger for them or make that situation worse for them when you're trying to help and make something better. And sometimes it happens, and it's because in trying to understand their triggers, you may be part of the trigger and you don't realize it. And then again, it's not that you're doing anything wrong, but it's like you said, some triggers are not what you would think normal triggers are to you, because everybody has different triggers.
And again, right, like some of it is also understanding what you need. And yes, I do stand by my statement that anybody who's going through this, they need to be surrounded by a lot of love. But see, like for me, it's not necessarily
but
verbal.
Love takes different forms for different people.
But that's what I'm saying. It's now so let's say, for example, like you said, if
real quick on Billy watch, she's rolling around on the floor right now off camera. You can't see.
Dear God.
We can see it, but the camera can't see it.
I love that girl.
Okay, go on.
So like for example, like like you said, a couple of your friends are going through their stuff. Now they probably need you in their own way. They probably cannot verbalize how they need you. You can tell them things are gonna be okay. Maybe that's not what they want to hear right now, but it could be something minor. Like let's say if you know that one of your friends prefers doing something, right? You actually spending that time and not even talking about their situation, but just hanging out with them.
Just spending the time with them.
I guarantee you that person is recognizing how much you love them through that action, right? And you might have a friend who wants to hear it, that I love you, you're amazing.
What's that?
You know what I mean?
That Love Languages book, right?
That's all.
That's really what you're covering there too.
And that's something we'll get into like another time. That's a whole different discussion, and I think that's also. It's important. I think it's important to understand other people's love languages, and it's not necessarily in a romantic manner. And I stress that because
they manifest in every different type of relationship, whether it's like a mother and son, or a sister and brother, or like
everything,
siblings, friends, anything. It doesn't matter. Coworkers, like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Everybody speaks a different way. We'll get into it in a second.
There's a book on that, which I actually plan to purchase. So like I've done my online research, but you and I both know I hate that. I need my
you need paper
and like my like little sticky pad things and my highlighters, and you've seen my books.
Yeah, you turn reading into a project.
I enjoy it. Okay.
Keep it to yourself.
Read a book.
Audiobooks are great.
I hate audiobooks. I can never remember anything. I cannot highlight stuff.
Great. I drive, so while I'm driving around, I listen. It's fantastic.
Okay, max I can do is a podcast, but then I realized I have to hear the podcast like 10 times and make my notes.
Well, I don't hear it 10 times.
Dear God. But okay, so to end this conversation,
yes,
I will say as someone who is personally dealing with it and battling with it, it's, first of all, I can't believe I'm actually talking about this on our podcast. But if this has
You'll only
helped,
put it out if you're comfortable with it.
you know what? Sometimes you have to do things you're not comfortable if it's gonna help somebody else. So if people who are listening to this, and if it does help you in any way,
That's an amazing way to look at it.
then this putting myself out here has totally been
Worthwhile.
yeah, even if it's one person, to that one person can make such a huge difference in someone's life.
Yeah.
If you are in this situation, I highly recommend, you don't have to tell the world if you're not comfortable with it, but go, there are a lot of resources, or if you want to talk to me in private about it, that's fine too.
Message.
Just message me, and I'll send you off the resources that's been helping me. And it's a tough journey, and there's a lot of other factors like how to forgive yourself and things like that, which is the hardest thing, but it does help you overcome this and manage this and just be who you truly are, which is like a happy, good-hearted person. Yeah.
I didn't even have to ask Rashi for her final thought before we ended off the show, which is great. So guys, thank you for listening to Elevated Grapes. It was a bit of a deep conversation. We hope that you gained something from it. I know I did. I'm pretty sure I can speak on behalf of Rashi to say that she did. And these are conversations that have to happen because you never know who around you is going through something. So have them and be there for the people that are around you and that you care for. This is your host, Sethi.
And Stylist Rashi Bindra.
And we're signing off. Till next week.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.